Perhaps 8-bit isn't exactly the secret sauce for this series. Proto Man now is evil and has kidnapped Dr. Light. Dr. Cossack from Mega Man 4 is there to help by strengthening the Buster Shot, and if you collect all the letters or the plates, one for each Robot Master stage, you get a new weapon, Slash Bloody Beat. Rush is back, but after the previous game's paltry use, the Marine function has been nixed. Also, after beating Starman, you receive an item that is there just to be different, I guess? The Super Arrow. I mean, we still have Rush Jet, but yeah, Rush Marine has been dropped. The latter totally makes sense, as with Mega Man 4, they really didn't utilize it at all. The Super Arrow feels more like it was an upgraded version of Item 2 from Mega Man 2 and wedges itself in Rush Jet's comfy square. Sure, both have utility, as Rush Jet is a little bit slower and more maneuverable, but the Super Arrow is super speedy and will stick to walls as a temporary platform, but it can be used as a weapon as well. It will disappear once it hits an enemy. Being able to access Beat by collecting all of the plates and letters is a nice touch, though myself I do prefer the method of gaining power-ups like they did in Mega Man 4, where you actually will collect them by finding them in secret paths, and to a much lesser degree, Mega Man 1. The Robot Masters this time around aren't bad, but truthfully most of the power-ups gained are underwhelming. Thankfully this isn't as much of an issue, as you can just use the Buster Shot, even though you will lose its charge if you do get hit, unlike Mega Man 4. It worked well enough to beat all of the Robot Masters without the need of their weaknesses, which is a nice touch. On one hand, it allows anybody to pick up the game and just bounce all around to do whatever stage they want to first, and save the ones they really like last or something of the sort. This really weakens any staying power of the bosses, as their weapons are an extension of that, and when those weapons don't carry on their legacy or leave a good impression, you don't really get much. The Power Stone is mocked for how trashy it is. The Charge Kick follows in Topspin's footsteps, which is, I mean, at least with Topspin was able to, if it hit well, which is never a good thing to say, but if it properly hit, it not only kicked one of the Robot Masters' butts, but also with the final boss in Gamma. But Charge Kick didn't quite do that. Basically fumbles around with dealing solely with Wave Man, and honestly the fight is a lot more interesting and fun without it. Charge Man stage, it's a train, pretty straightforward. The plate for this stage is easy to grab. The stage's theme sounds kind of like a train ride and reflects the stage well, but the tune itself isn't one to linger. It doesn't really have anything that hang your hat on, piece of the melody. You're like, oh yeah, this really rocks. It's just kind of there. And the fight against Charge Man is the most obnoxious of the Robot Masters in this game. He can either be super aggressive and be on your tail and pivot underneath you when you try to jump over him, or he'll just be somewhat flat-footed. One of the first of the latter stage bosses, Darkman Stage 1's boss, is a souped-up version of that. Equally obnoxious, and yeah, I'll pass. And like I said before, the Charge Kick is pitiful. There's really no need to be using it. Next up we have Starman. Unlike tampering with ice physics, we have a stage that's more like Bubble Man's from Mega Man 2. Spikes galore and the ability to jump as high as the sky. The space aesthetic with the stars is nice. The planet at the beginning is weak compared to what they had initially thought of for Gemini Man stage. The plate is easy to get. Possibly the easiest one to get in this one. You just have to make sure you pressurize your jumps. Press that button just properly enough. The song to me is more annoying than spacey, and the stage as a whole is fairly underwhelming after the first handful of screens. Same goes for the fight. The stars look pretty poor or cheap. It just, I don't know, something about it doesn't look right, and the hit detection seems really off. Generally in your favor, which is, I guess, nice in that regard, but if anything, the fight's flow is more stuttered, stop and go than anything. You have to wait, because the weapon that you get and the weapon that Starman uses is Star Crash, which is this game's shield weapon. It's a fine concept to carry on throughout the different games and everything, but this one feels really, it's not very impressive. It feels as flimsy as it looks. Next up we have Gravity Man. His stage is another twist or gimmick with the gravity flip-flopping throughout, which isn't terrible because it is pronounced when it is happening, so it won't catch you off guard or be really obnoxious in that regard. However, it can be slightly disorienting with the control scheme just because you are having to start moving from up and down, especially if you like to slide. If you like to slide, it might throw you off for a moment. It does serve well as it gets you prepared for the boss fight itself. The aesthetics for this stage is more of like a supply ship. Nothing too jarring or bad. The song feels like how the gravity works in this stage, going up and down, in the sense that half of it is enjoyable, the other half of it is messy and not so good. For me, the plate can be tricky to access, but I've noticed that if you just slide off the edge, you're more than likely to get it. It's just making sure you know to do that and stuff. The fight itself is heavily scripted on a small loop, so it may initially feel fun, and I know for some speedrunners it does come off as pretty fun. Once you get it down, you just boom, 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 boom. To me, because it's so scripted and so routine, it's not nearly as fun to fight repeatedly as somebody who's not a speedrunner. Is just kind of like, eh. The weapon you get from Gravity Man is Gravity Hold, and yeah, press attack and it shoots the gravity, reverses it, and the enemies go up and bye-bye. I don't use it myself, though. Easy to use on the boss that it's weak against. Even without it, you don't need it, but it is nice in that it is quick. Where Toadman, you'd have to shoot it and then it would take a moment. For this game, they took it the next sort of step and went, okay, instantaneous, boom, got it, go. It is a nice touch, but it's still a weapon that's just kind of, because all it is just a quick flash of the screen, there's really not much to it. Up in the sky, but not too perilous with jumps. There's a small bit with some falling platforms and having to time your jumps to grab the plate. 2/3 or so throughout the stage, maybe a little bit further in. The stage feels lackluster. The falling platforms show up for a brief bit, and then it's followed by this quick vertical scroller that's much like the beginning of the stage, but with some spikes. It's gone just as quickly as it arrives. It's like they took segments of different things and they didn't really establish much going on with it. It's like, here's something, here's a little bit. Oh, well, you know what, here's you're in the sky, so here's some platforms to be careful of a pitfall. It's so quick and pieced together, it doesn't really stick. The song isn't bad, but I get more aquatic vibes from it than anything up in the sky. The fight isn't too tough. It does get obscured up with the cloud and stuff. It's not too tough, and you can put yourself in a little bit of a bind, but even then, yeah, if you just take a moment to be like, okay, alright, let me readjust some positioning here. It's not a bad fight at all. Also, once you beat Gyro Man, you get the gyro attack and the rush jet. Gyro attack is a weapon I don't like, only because you have to move it afterwards, and I don't know, maybe just because of me, and I have dumb fingers. There's half the time where I'll want to hit it, and I'll hit it too early or something, but that's part of the challenge, right? Next up here is Crystal Man stage. It has strong Gemini Man flavor, but where Starman, who took the space vibes, Crystal Man took the glitter and shine. If anything, it's certainly a little bit less prominent in its coloring. The plate for this one is snookered underneath some spikes during a falling down portion of the stage. It's not too hard to get, but if you're playing it for the first time, you're not gonna get it. If you somehow do, that's more from luck. But when you know it's there, it's not too difficult to obtain. And whoever made those crystal dumping chutes needs bopped upside the head. Those are like the worst things in this whole game. It's easy to, when you figure out to clear the jump, just make the jump right as the object is falling on the horizontal plane with Mega Man, or just slightly above it. And it's not so bad because they fall at random. It's not like, oh hey, 1, 2, and then you can jump. Or, oh, this one drops 3, jump. No, if there is a process to it, I don't know it. It feels like it's random. So The musical theme is really bleh and uneventful to me. However, I do really enjoy this fight. It's not mind-bogglingly out of this world or anything. It is fun though. I enjoy the objects bouncing around and needing to dodge that. Though when that's not going on, Crispman's loop is pretty easy to contend with, as he'll just jump a little higher and then fire off a shot. It's not too tough to deal with. The weapon you get is the Crystal Eye, which is sort of similar to Gemini's shot from Mega Man 3, in that you get this eyeball that shoots. It's not an eyeball, but you get this orb, this crystal orb that shoots out at first, and then once it hits a wall, it breaks apart. It's pretty ho-hum, so it's kind of okay. Up next here is Wave Man stage. I'll be honest, I really don't care for this one. It's slow, half of it's devoted to this side-scrolling jaunt, which isn't terrible, but the plate is during that portion is when you can find it, so don't miss it because it appears with 2 of those jumping fish, and if you're not quite prepared for it, you can get hit and then up missing the plate, which is pretty crummy. Get the bubbles, the bubble thing will reappear in a later Mega Man game. This one sucks. I will say this, the musical theme is aquatic, so it fits, but it doesn't really stick to me too well. The boss fight is a bit more challenging. Nothing too terrible. It'll keep you busy. The only thing that's kind of obnoxious is that Wave Man has this like water fountain attack sort of thing that'll come out from the ground, and I don't know if I'm just dumb. Certainly could be the case. For whatever reason, it's somewhat hard for me to anticipate, so it'll catch me off guard, and it can lead to frustration if you're not prepared to contend with it. It's certainly better than a lot of the other ones. And the water wave weapon you get is good for one of the latter Darkman bosses, and boy shucks howdy, it's pretty crummy. I think I would rather have the water gun from Mega Man 8 than this. Actually, I know I would rather have that because that at least has some shot to it. Water wave, it just sticks to the ground and that's not good. Napalm, check. Jungle setting, no, check. Tigers, check. Oh boy. Anyways, we also get caverns with flowing water and some underground base. It's not a mess, and it's an active, fun stage except for the last little portion. But I think they could have probably gotten away with not doing the jungle aesthetic for this one. That is what it is. The song is the best one in the stage for the Robot Masters to me. That's the one I like the most out of that bunch. The plate is easy to get. The fight with Napalm Man isn't too tough. You can be pretty sloppy and still pull through. If you're able to stick close, you can lock him into this Toad Man-like loop pretty easily. Like I said, if you're not sloppy, it's an easy fight to get through. It gives you the Napalm Bomb, which is good against Stone Man, but I don't honestly remember ever using it outside of it. It might have some other uses, but this is why I think this game doesn't quite stick so well. Mind you, yeah, it's coming later on in years for like the NES catalog and for the series itself, but these poor weapons also have a hand in cratering Mega Man 5's fandom, I think. The last one of the Robot Masters, Stone Man, his stage takes place in the mountains and is fairly well built, some pitfalls here and there. This one does feel a bit longer than the other ones. I don't know why. Maybe because it's continuous, there's not a lot of stopping and going, and it does feel like there's a lot of different screens. It's not too bad. It's a very well put together stage. It gives me some vibes of Skullman stage from Mega Man 4, but I would probably put it above that, because Skullman stage has some wonky sections, where this one, the wonky sections are instead left for the secret, which is something I do have a problem with. Where all the other stages, the plate is fairly well visible and, for the most part, easy to access. This one, it is hidden behind destroyable walls. It's early on, it's quick to get if you do happen to miss it, but it really doesn't make any effort to show you that, hey, this is a thing. That's why I feel it's a little sneaky. The song for the stage itself is probably my second favorite of the Robot Masters. At first it doesn't really seem like it, but For me, it really sticks around the more I hear it. I like it as it goes along. As for the fight with Stone Man, I don't hate it, but it is a bit hot and cold. If he uses his Power Stone all the time, it does make the fight a little more interesting, a little more difficult. However, most of the time that I have fought him, he'll just jump around like a goober. And of course, his wonderful Power Stone attack is so terrible, so bad, so very, very bad. Now, continuing on with the trend that technically starts in Mega Man 4, but you can sort of see the foundations being laid in Mega Man 3, is that you're presented with allegedly Proto Man doing all this evil stuff, and he even gets a neat Proto Man castle, and come to find out that it's not. It is, surprise, surprise, Dr. Wily. I've said before, the lore is and can be very interesting, but the games themselves really don't need to be bogged down by it. Put your whatever little story in to get the impetus of the story to go, and then just run with it. For the Dark Man stages, there's 4 of them. One of them's a complete, necessarily a letdown, but there's really nothing to it. But the other stages are alright. They have some of them have some couple challenging sections, but it does feel like it's a proper step up from the Robot Master stages. So that's nice, but there isn't really anything that thematically distinguishes itself from Dr. Wily stages. So that's a bit of a letdown. For example, Dr. Cossack from Mega Man 4's got this Russian theme, snow and everything, so it gives it something a little different. The boss fights themselves are also a step up. These are a bit more challenging through either using their weakness or all of the E-tanks, or however you want to do it. You should be able to get through those fights without too much of an issue. Anyways, once you get through all those, and then you get to the end of it, you have this expositional mess, and Dr. Wily is revealed, and there's a handful of stages to go through there. Sort of similar in that regard. The step from Darkman stages to Dr. Wily stages, there's really just 2 main ones, and they're not as clear of a step up in difficulty, but there is at least a couple difficult sections there. It does at least stay consistent and isn't like, oh, these are really tough and then it gets super easy or something of the sort. The first boss there's not really much to him. Pretty easy and not too interesting in my mind. The second one, I think, is a little bit more interesting and does have a bit of a leap of difficulty. As for the Dr. Wily fights themselves, if you clear out the refights of the Robot Masters, you get the Dr. Wily press as a solo fight, which I did a little bit of it with its weakness, but you can really just do it with the Buster. There's really not much of anything to it. Second fight and the capsule, they're not bad. They do feel like a step down from Mega Man 4's and what would come next. Not that it's necessarily bad, and Beat certainly makes it a lot easier. However, I will say the capsule tune fight, it's a really nice battle theme. I do like that. However, those few peaks of interest don't lift this game up. It's bland, and it's not necessarily the presentation, but musically, for the most part, there are some really good tunes, like the Darkman stages. I do like the Wily stages as well. Napalm Man and Stone Man's are the 2 that really stick to me, but there's not much oomph to them in that regard. This game is a bit bland from its music and the special weapons the game isn't necessarily directed towards that. It does introduce Beat and has the temporary super arrow. From the other special weapons to how the stages are designed, where they try to do different things but are rarely making it engaging enough to pique my interest. It doesn't do enough to distinguish itself, I think. It's neat, but probably better than 8. I think the games that follow and precede it just do a much better job.